Ricky Williams, welcome to VladTV. What's up, man?
Good to be here. I mean, really, this has been a target of mine to show up on Vlad TV, so it's an honor to be here.
A good man, good man. It's good to see you. You looking healthy. You looking good, brother.
Yeah, I'm taking care of myself. I got to. I played a lot of football, so I gotta eat right and keep moving.
Do you still train as an athlete, or have you kind of? Because you look like you're still in great shape.
The second part of my career, I started getting more into yoga and Tai Chi, and so I don't train like a football player. I train more like a martial artist.
Got you. Okay, so you got a really interesting story. I'm definitely looking forward to diving into it. So let's kind of take it back to the beginning. You're originally from San Diego, correct?
Yep, the crib. Yeah.
What I didn't know is you have a twin sister. How many children?
So I have a twin sister, and then I have a younger sister who's a year and a half younger. So, but we're all really close in age.
Got you. Your parents, tell me about them. High school sweethearts?
No, they met through the church. I grew up in a very religious family. Both of my parents were preachers' kids, and so they met through the church in San Diego. And if you're in the church back then, and you want to have sex, you got to get married. And so they got married at 19, and mom fell pregnant with twins, a month or two after. And so 20-year-old parents giving birth to twins. And truly, my mom's wish was to go into the military, but her parents told her that's not a proper profession for a woman, and so she went towards the traditional role of becoming a wife and a mother. But I can feel it. Growing up, she should have gone into she should have gone into the military. But I will say, I think a lot of my upbringing really trained me to become the kind of athlete that I became.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I just mean, my mom's, her favorite sayings were all about, life is tough, but get over it and keep it moving. And so dealing with adversity was a big part of my childhood. Not to run away from it, not to shy away from it, but to face it squarely and push through it. And I think that's helped me in so many areas of my life.
Got you. Your dad, what'd your dad do for a living?
So my dad worked a whole bunch of different jobs. He never went to college, but he was always very skilled, and so he did a lot of custodial work. A lot of different things. But I think that was one of the things that created a lot of stress in my parents' marriage early on. Was my dad had a difficult time holding a job, but really he was an artist. He played the organ in church, and everyone loved him for it. But the way the world is, sometimes artists are pushed to be more conventional and get a regular job.
Mm-hmm. What religion are you guys?
Pentecostal.
Really?
So we grew up like the real church, where the women didn't wear pants, minimal if any makeup, no nail polish. Yeah.
I was talking with Rodney Jerkins, Darkchild.
Yeah.
Grew up the same way.
Yep. I mean, I'm grateful for it. I feel like I'm a godly person because of it. At my foundation, the family I grew up in, we always put God first. And, it really helped me have faith. And I think that faith in myself and that faith in a higher power also has helped me have the kind of success I've had in life.
Got you. So your parents, they divorced in '83. So they're relatively still young when you guys get divorced, correct?
Yeah. 20, I think 26, 27. Yeah.
What was behind them getting divorced? Do you know?
Well, it is, especially we go back to the 80s, there's a lot of complexities behind marriages and behind divorce. And so, the way it ended up, playing out was my dad had some opinions and issues around sexuality that my mom didn't share. And so there were a couple experiences very early on in life where, my dad exposed himself to my sisters and I. kind of probably a premature sexual education. And obviously, we kind of sensed maybe there's something not right about this and mentioned it to my mom. And of course, she was furious. And then again, being in the church, you're not supposed to get a divorce. And so they tried to work through it. And then a couple years later, kind of the last straw was my dad asked me to take Polaroid pictures of him naked that he wanted to send to a Playgirl or to a magazine. And then I told my mom, she found the pictures in the trash, and then we came home from school that next day and all my dad's stuff was gone.
Wow. Do you and your dad have a relationship to this day?
We have a relationship. I wouldn't say it's a strong relationship. I mean, when we see each other, it's warm, and we give each other hugs and we enjoy our time together, but we don't go out of our way to see each other.
And for that matter, was your dad ever arrested or did any charges come up against him for exposing himself to you guys?
I don't. There were charges, and I don't think I don't remember the details if he spent any time in jail for this. But I do know that he's had to register as a sex offender, um, different places that he's lived, and that's obviously caused a lot of issues for him.
As a result of him exposing himself to you and your sisters or something
It
else?
was yeah, it was out of the whole divorce agreement situation that happened with us.
Wow. How did that affect you academically? How were you as a young student?
You know, I was always a really smart kid, but I didn't really apply myself, and so I was always in the advanced classes, but I was the bottom of the advanced classes, and so the reputation of being a smart kid, but doesn't apply himself. And then as I got older and I started to become known for being an athlete, I kind of left school work behind and just focused on being an athlete. And I was smart enough to get by in school, but it was rarely a time where I truly applied myself to my education.
Y- Do you think that the the sports saved you in any, because there's so many people who are, the same as you. They're highly intelligent, but they don't apply themselves for whatever the reasons are. Not sure if your dad in that incident had anything to do with it. Um,
Well, I think a
but
lot of
sport,
I think a lot of it is my mom, she once my parents divorced, my mom went back to school and got her AA. She went to junior college. And my mom was always super smart and really always applied herself, and she always succeeded at everything she did. And so my mom pushed education. She tried really hard to push education, but my dad, he didn't go to college, and he didn't really push education that much. And so I think possibly if my parents would have stayed together and they both would have pushed education, I would have gone in that direction. But not having a dad around and kind of looking for a sense of identity, uh, it was easy to be the fastest kid in the third grade, and so that just kind of stuck. And I think when we're teenagers, we're looking for something to separate ourselves from everyone else and to be different. And for me, I found sports, and I definitely think it saved me because it gave me a channel for my intelligence. And I think yes, I have a lot of God-given natural ability, physical ability, but I think what made me a superior athlete was that I applied my intelligence to becoming a better football player.
yeah, when did you realize that I have something special about me? Like when I step on a football field, I'm different. I am better than the average person.
So, I mean, I knew in kindergarten that I was faster than everybody else. And so that was, I was, my nickname growing up was Quick, Quick. And so Wheels, right? So I always knew I was faster than everyone, but specifically when I knew I had a gift with football was my sophomore year. We were playing Kearney High, and a good program at the time in San Diego. And I think I had like 8 carries for 140 yards. And for me as a sophomore to perform like that against one of the best teams, I knew that okay, I got something special. And a week later, we were playing another team, and I just noticed I was just running and people kept bouncing off of me. And I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, but I noticed that people kept bouncing off me. And so I started to realize, I think I have a future in this game.
Your high school career is incredible. You rushed for over 4,000 yards, uh, over 55 touchdowns. Uh, you did amazing in high school, but you didn't come into high school bulked up the way eventually would be. You were kind of frail entering high school. Is that not correct? And then you put on something like 25 pounds in your sophomore year?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wasn't frail, but I wasn't, I wasn't a big guy. I was considered a little guy. And when I first started playing football, I played linebacker. And so for that position, I was considered small. But yeah, that summer I just it was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I just lived on PB and J's, and I put on 25 pounds of solid weight, and then I became the fast guy that was big. And it's a whole nother thing to be the little quick guy and then to be the big fast guy, because when you're the little quick guy, everyone's trying to take your head off. When you're the big fast guy, everybody gets out the way. And so it changed a lot.
So you do exceptionally well in high school. Eventually, you go down to the University of Texas. What makes you pick that school?
So first of all, when I was growing up, my dream was to be a professional baseball player. But when I was a teenager, I was watching Notre Dame football, and there was something about the tradition of college football that really captured me. And I told myself, all right, I'm gonna be like Bo Jackson, or I'm gonna play college football, but I'm also gonna play minor league baseball. And so I told all the colleges that were recruiting me that I'm gonna spend my summers playing minor league baseball. And so some of the schools, they weren't as interested, but some were. And so my top five were Texas, USC, Notre Dame, Stanford, and Colorado. And I kind of had a checklist. I said I want to start as a freshman. I want to go to a program that has a rich tradition, but it's been kind of down and is ready to come back onto the scene, because I want to, be that missing piece to the puzzle. And most importantly was I needed the environment to feel like family, to feel like family. And so as I went on my different recruiting trips, I just checked off the list, and I got to Texas, and it was all the checks. And there was a special moment when I got to Texas. And I when I talk to kids about choosing a college, I say, the most important thing is where you feel comfortable, because when you feel comfortable, you're going to be able to perform your best. And there was a moment at Texas where I walked out of one of the rooms and I saw Earl Campbell's Heisman Trophy. And something about that Heisman Trophy, I looked at it, and the feeling that I got was, if I come here, I can get one of those. And I just trusted that feeling. And so I committed to Texas, and it all worked out.
Were you able to play both sports in Texas?
So I played baseball for the Phillies. So the Phillies drafted me out of high school. And they still allowed me to go to Texas, and Texas was cool with me going to play baseball in the summers. And so I would go to school in the fall and the spring, and then for the summers I would go to Florida or North Carolina or New York and play minor league baseball. And then I would come back right before training camp and start football season.
So ultimately, what made you choose football over baseball?
I was better at it. I mean, for me, baseball is one of those things where I just needed a lot more time to get better. And because I was only playing a couple of months, I didn't have the time. And then my goal was, as I got drafted into the NFL, to keep playing baseball, but all the NFL teams said no. And so I made the decision to give up baseball and focus solely on football.
Got you. So while you're down in Texas, you're known as the Texas Tornado. You're killing it. You wind up either holding or sharing 20 NCAA records. You become the NCAA Division I career leader in 1998 with over 6,000 yards. Are you surprising yourself at this moment? Are you looking in the mirror and saying, I knew I was good, but I'm really spectacular?
At this point, no. My junior year, I led the nation in rushing and scoring on a 4-7 team. That year, I surprised myself. But after that, I kind of expected to improve on those numbers. So my whole trajectory, like in high school, every single year I improved on my numbers. And then I get into college, every single year I improve on my numbers. And then if I first 3 years in the NFL, 4 years in the NFL, I improved on my numbers. Then I broke that streak. But at this point, because I had such a spectacular junior season, I had the option to go into the NFL as a first round pick. But I was going back and forth thinking, do I want to go to the next level or do I want to stay in college? And one day I was looking at the record book, and I was flipping through the pages, and I got to the all-time leading rusher, Tony Dorsett. And I was looking at the yards, and I was thinking to myself, if I do just a little better than I did last year, I could be the all-time leading rusher in the history of college football. And then I turned a couple pages, and I saw the all-time leader in touchdowns. And I did the math, and I said, if I have the same year, 25 touchdowns that I had last year, I'll break this record too. And then I flipped 2 more pages, and there was all-purpose yards. And same thing. I said, wow, if I have a similar year to what I had last year, I could own all 3 of these records, these all-time records. And to me, that was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something special. And so it made the decision to stay in college easy. And so that was the expectation, is that I was going to break those records. And so, it was a wonderful feeling in one of those moments where you feel rewarded for faith and believing in yourself, but it wasn't surprising. No.
Got you. You go on to win the 64th Heisman Trophy. What does that feel like?
It's that same. It felt like a reward for believing in myself. It goes back to that moment when I was on my recruiting trip and I saw Earl's Heisman Trophy, and I had that sense, that feeling of, if I come here, I can do that. And then the hard work that it took, and to have those achievements. And then the most special thing to me was my teammates. Because my junior year, again, I led the nation in rushing and scoring, but didn't even get invited to the Heisman Trophy because our team was 4-7. And so I knew for me to have my own personal, journey completed, I needed the help of my teammates. And so the way that our team came together and rallied around that focus and really helped put Texas back on the map, I'm more proud of that than I am the Heisman Trophy. That because of the season that we had, Texas was able to bring in guys like Vince Young and Cedric Benson and all these guys that helped, Jamal Charles, that helped Texas win a national championship in 2005 in one of the greatest 2006 and one of the greatest football games ever. Yeah.
Speaking of the Heisman, I know that moment has to be surreal for you. You said one of the reasons that you went down or chose Texas was seeing Earl Campbell, and the fact that you're able to get this Heisman, and to this day, both of you guys have statues in Texas. What does that feel like, knowing that your legacy will go on indefinitely forever?
To me, especially all the things that have been going on in the world the past year or so, one of the things that's come out of it is Texas renamed the football field Campbell Williams Field. And you mentioned the statues, and Texas didn't allow African American football players to play on the football team until 1974. And so, and there's a deep racial history in the South, and specifically at the University of Texas. And so I think Earl would agree, to have 2 African-American statues, 3 now, because, the first African-American player, Julius Whittier at Texas, had just had a statue erected this past year. And so to me, that's what I'm most proud of, is that we're doing something to change people's perception.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. Before I get into your NFL career, I want to go back for a second and just touch on, you chose to stay in college one more year to break those records. I think it's admirable. Many people would have chased the check. Many people would have thought about it and said, what if I get injured? Is this worth it? I got to believe, a lot of people were in your ear at that moment saying, look, you got to strike while the iron is hot. You putting off getting millions of dollars for the ability to do something great, break these records, was it an easy decision for you? Or is it something that you had to really think about? Because I gotta believe there was a lot of money sitting on the table waiting for you at that moment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of money and a lot of people in my ear, and it was difficult until I saw that open that record book, and once I saw what the possibility for greatness, I didn't care about the money, and what I realized about myself over time is I appreciate money is important and we need it to live, but beyond that, I really don't care that much about money. For me, the beauty of money is allowed me to have amazing experiences. And I realized for me, the purpose of life is to have amazing experiences, not to collect money. Um, and I think we all have to find our own definition of what success means. And for some people, stacking money is a valid means of success. But for me, that never made me happy.
So money never made you happy.
It didn't. I mean, the only time money became an issue of my happiness was when I got married. Then it was, yeah, yeah. Then it became important because when the wife was comfortable, everything was much easier. Yeah,
Got you.
yeah.
Okay. So you go to the New Orleans Saints, 1999. Head coach Mike Ditka at the time. He does something unprecedented. He gives up all of his draft picks for you. Is this something that you knew was going to happen? Did you know you were going to New Orleans? Like,
I had no
Mike
idea.
Ditka, he's a legend.
I had no idea. I mean, he had gone on record saying that he would do something crazy like that if I was still around. But in my mind, I was gone in the top 3 picks, and he wouldn't have the ability to do it. So at the time, I thought, wow, this is a great compliment. But when draft day hit, and the Browns took Tim Couch with the first pick, I was pretty confident I was going number 2 to Philly. But Philly took Donovan McNabb. I knew I wasn't going 3 because the Bengals had Corey Dillon. 4 was the Indianapolis Colts, who had just traded Marshall Faulk to the Rams. And so I pretty much was convinced I was going to the Colts to play with Peyton Manning. But they took Edgerrin James. And so when that happened, then you could hear things start to ruffling in the background. And the Redskins had the next pick. And that's when I realized, okay, something's going down. And that's when the Saints were able to trade up to that 5th pick and make the blockbuster deal. And at the time, honestly, I was so disappointed that I had slid all the way to the 5th pick that it didn't hit me for probably a couple of days when I went down to New Orleans and had the big press conference. But yeah, it was a wild time from the outside, a lot of people would think this was the greatest time of my life, but it was rough. It was rough. I think I left New York on draft day actually quite disappointed.
Okay, so you disappointed. Is this more of an ego thing? Is it more, I can't even believe I slid down to 5th?
That's exactly what it was. Like, again, part of when where my naivete got in the way is I thought that what I did in college, showed everyone that I was the best player in the draft and that I could be a player to build a franchise around. And going to 4, I was like, okay, I would have been okay with that, especially getting a chance to play with Peyton Manning. But slipping to the 5th pick, not even being the first running back, and going to the Saints, who had a great defense but didn't have much on offense. I could kind of feel, where this was headed. And so, yeah, I was disappointed, but mainly it was an ego thing. I thought that I had, created a resume that warranted being a higher pick.
Understood. You go down to New Orleans and you and Mike Ditka take this, you pose for ESPN, the magazine. Do you remember that cover?
I mean, yeah, it's a memorable cover.
Yes, it is. It's bride and groom for better or for worse.
Yes.
That photo, it stands out even to this day. Do you regret taking that photo? Or is it just something you had fun with? What made you say, yeah, I'll get in a bride's dress and stand next to Mike Ditka and take this photo for a national publication.
Well, I mean, I guess in my mind, I figured out, I just won the Heisman Trophy. I'm a professional football player. I don't really, I don't really have any questions or doubts about my masculinity, and so I thought it would be fine. I thought people would see the humor in it, and it was interesting because we were married for better or for worse. I mean, it was a marriage that only lasted less than a year when I got hurt and he got fired, but it was foreshadowing. I don't at when the magazine came out and I saw, how the media responded and people's response, I had a moment where I regretted it, but after that passed, again, back to what I said earlier, it's something that's gonna last for a long time, and people are gonna talk about that magazine cover. I think so many athletes, if all we accomplish is on the football field, eventually people forget about us, right? And I think when, like my idol, Jim Brown, was able to take his athletic ability and turn himself into an activist and an actor and a respected elder. And so for me, playing football or sports was really about, okay, this gets me out there, but in an opportunity to have a platform. And so, I realized looking back that all those, things that I did that where I got in trouble in the moment, it allowed my football career to be about so much more than just football.
Absolutely. You end up signing with Master P's No Limit Sports. What made you, Master P was new into the sporting arena. What made you choose to sign with No Limit Sports? And did you have a relationship with Master P prior?
I didn't have a relationship personally, but I had a intimate relationship with his music. And so coming from Southern California to Texas, at a time where really, that South Coast or down South rap hip hop was really starting to flourish, I was right there, and it was brand new, and so I was soaking it up. And again, being the Heisman Trophy winner and going to be a very high pick in the draft, I saw it as an opportunity, right? Is that people are watching what I do, and I can become a pioneer and open up new doors for people in different ways to look at things. And so going through that selection process of choosing an agent, most of the typical guys, they just felt slimy, like they don't care about me, they don't care about me. And Terry Rito, who worked for No Limit Sports and who was my main contact, we developed a really close relationship, and he almost became like an uncle to me. And so when I was thinking about what I want my experience to be, with my agent, I wanted to be more like family, right? Where we appreciate, we love each other, we look out for each other, and hanging out with No Limit Sports at their compound in Baton Rouge. That's what it was, that it was a family, and I happened to end up playing in New Orleans, and so, I was making a choice that felt good to me, regardless of what everyone else thought.
Got you. It obviously was highly questioned at that moment, and then it became even more criticized as the deal came together.
Yeah.
This contract, it was much lower than many people think that you were worth at the time. You signed for $8 million with incentives that could range anywhere between 11 million to 68 million. Many people thought you should get much more money up front. But I love the fact that you said you were the one that pushed for this contract to be structured this way. Can you talk to that?
Well, yeah, because
second?
yeah, so Leland Hardy was my agent, the agent at No Limit Sports, and when he started talking to the Saints, he spent a day playing golf with the general manager, came back to me and he said, okay, we worked through some details, and I took your notes and I took their notes, and I put together three possible deals. And he said the first deal would make you the highest paid rookie ever in the history of the NFL. Okay, the second deal you get the maximum signing bonus you can get because you were the only player drafted. You get the maximum signing bonus you can get, which $8.8 million. and then minimum salary, but a chance to really knock it out of the park if you hit these incentives. And then he said the third deal is a hybrid between both, where you'll get more guaranteed money, incentives, but at a lower threshold, so you won't be able to make as much from incentives. And I mean, we went back and forth, and I said, the way that this all went down, what feels good to me is the Saints put a lot on the line, okay? They put a lot on the line, trading all those picks. And so, I'll take that maximum signing bonus, but the rest I should have to earn. I should have to perform in a way that justifies the picks that they made. And again, as I look back, I'm not saying that was the right way to look at it, but that was the way that felt good to me in that moment. I don't think I would have felt good about myself to become the highest paid player when I hadn't done anything. Again, I'm not saying that was smart or wise, but that was how I felt in the moment.
Looking back at a younger Ricky Williams, would you have felt better about making a different decision if in that moment someone had told you, your agent had told you, look, I understand the way that you're thinking, but it's a business and it's admirable the way you're thinking. More people should even think that way. But we're in this thing to make sure that you never, should you blow out your ankle, which eventually happens, should anything happen to you on a football field, all of your work, all of the hard work to get to this point, you're at least compensated and you can take care of your family for the rest of your life. Would you have preferred that your agent pushed more for you to make a different decision?
I don't, because that argument wouldn't have worked. Because again, I don't value money the way that people think that I should. And so if he could have made a stronger philosophical argument, that might have worked. But an argument of you need to make more money, that just would have been hard for me. Again, I was 21 years old. I never really had a bunch in my life. And so the way I'm thinking about it, $8 million, that felt good to me at the time, right? And again, I don't know that you make a good point. The one thing that I didn't take into consideration seriously was that I might get hurt. And what does that mean? And I think if we would have at least had more conversations about that, we could have talked about it in a way where I could have looked at it differently, and maybe we could have put something in the contract to account for that.
Understood. Everybody listens to their mother. Most people listen to their mother. You seem to have a really strong respect and fondness and love for your mother. I understand business is business. Did you discuss this decision at all with someone who's known you from birth, someone who was able or would have been able to give you a more philosophical argument or perspective to look at it because she knows you? She understands the right way to come at you.
It's funny that you asked that, because the truth is, right, if I could go back and do it again, I actually would have hired my mother to do my contract. Because my mom negotiated my minor league baseball contract, and she knocked it out of the park. And she's been doing contracts her whole life. And she's the kind of person where she would have gone and studied up all the NFL contracts, all the rookies, and she would have done a great job. And so going back, not only advice, I would have had my mom negotiate the contract.
Wow, that's interesting. So you get hurt. You ultimately make very little in terms of those incentives, which made that agreement, that contract, even more questionable, not just for yourself, but also for No Limit. These guys are taking a lot of hit, being inexperienced, very naive, not understanding what it.
Time out. So like the whole narrative, to me, the issue that I have with the whole narrative is that it revolves around valuing money. Okay. And again, yep. I don't want to say, of course we need money to survive, but But I never really thought about it until just hearing you say this. Is that if I would have become the highest paid player in highest paid rookie ever, and I would have gotten hurt and missed all those games, I would have felt worse about myself, not better, you know? And to me, at the end of the day, money comes and money goes, but dignity and self-respect, that's something that you is valuable for your whole life. And then you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't feel good about yourself, it doesn't mean anything. And so I've gone through financial ups and downs, but through all of it, I feel really good about myself and good about who I am. And so, you know, we can look back and say, yeah, if I made different decisions, I'd have more money in my account. Or even we can go to further in my career and say, if I had made different decisions, I'd be in the Hall of Fame. But that starts off with someone else's value system, not my value system. And what I learned through the whole process is what I value is experience. And so I had plenty of money to have all of the experiences that I needed to have. And for me, that's enough.
I love that. I love it. Well said. Okay. Eventually you part ways with No Limit Management. What's your relationship like with P now? What was the last straw that made you say, okay, let me take a different route moving forward?
Well, it just wasn't internally. No Limit Sports was starting to fall apart, and I don't know what was going on with them internally. I know that because of the coverage and what people said about the deal, that didn't help No Limit Sports. You know, that part of my plan really backfired. But you know, I feel like if I was out somewhere and I saw P, like, you know, we give each other dap and a big hug because, you know, we shared a special moment in history, and people will keep talking about this. And since then, as other, you know, people in the music industry have tried to get into sports, right? It's, you know, we paved the way. And I wasn't No Limit Sports only athlete. I was probably the most, you know, I was the biggest athlete. But again, you know, we started off talking about how interesting my story is, and this is a huge part of it. In those moments of feeling that family vibe and wearing that No Limit tank and being part of doing something different, that's something no one can ever take away from me.
Yeah, and I think it's admirable that you took that chance and you went with your gut. And I think that, you know, more people need to do that. So, you know, Mike Ditka, he's later fired. What was it like playing under Mike Ditka? Was he a great coach for you,
It was
or
awesome.
was it just not the right fit?
It was awesome. I loved it. I loved it. You know, if I'm gonna critique him as a coach, I think he was old school in the sense that he believed in hiring other assistant coaches that he liked and trusted, not necessarily that the players liked and respected. And so the big issue we had that year was nobody respected our offensive coordinator. And so it was tough. And then the bigger issue for me was that I was hurt, you know, pretty much the whole entire year. But even in those difficult circumstances, a 3-13 team where I was hurt and the star player, Ditka made it all. He made it all better, you know, because I became a better football player. I learned about the game. I learned about toughness. And you know, I was very fortunate. You know, two of my favorite coaches. I only got to play for each of them for a year, but Mike Ditka and Nick Saban. What I love about them is both of them. They tell you what they expect, and if you meet that expectation, then everything is good. And the expectation isn't about yards; it's about the way you approach the game and how hard you play. And for me, that's something that I could always nail. I could always give effort, and I can always work to get better. And having coaches that appreciate that, for me, is all you can ask for.
Your time, you spent 3 years down with the Saints. You know, some of them rough years because you were suffering with injuries, but you did relatively well. Speak to me just psychologically. What does that feel like for a pro athlete of your caliber? You're dealing with injuries. You are having some good years, some great games, but ultimately, you know, now you're playing on the highest level available, and it's not going exactly as you may have had it in your mind. Now you're dealing with real life. You know, my body is taking these beatings. So while you're down there, you're still a young man in your early 20s. How do you come to grips with that?
I was so, mired in disappointment. My very first preseason game, as a rookie, I had a high ankle sprain. And so after a rough like agent thing, a rough draft experience, finally get into training camp and it gets down to football, the magazine cover, right? Finally get down to football and I can push all that other crap out of the way and just focus on what I'm actually here to do. And then 2 weeks later, I'm in the training room, rehab, not even practicing. So it just started off like that, and it kind of got worse, and especially that rookie year. And then Ditka gets fired. Jim Haslett comes on, and that starts off rocky. Where the first meeting I have with Jim Haslett, he tells me, "I heard about you. That you're trouble and blah 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 blah." So I was like, "Damn, I don't even get a fair shake." But I put that aside and say I'm just going to work my ass off and focus and have the best season possible. And so I get in great shape. That season starts. First 10 games, 1,000 yards. Okay, averaging 100 yards a game. On my 1,000th yard, I break my ankle. Okay, and so where I've been humbled my rookie year, but I came back with a vengeance, was tearing it up. We had won 6 games in a row. I mean, we were going to the playoffs. Everything was back on track, right? Back on track. Then I break my ankle, and I remember a moment. I was in the locker room and we were playing the Carolina Panthers, and it was the third quarter where I broke my ankle. So I came in the locker room, I did an X-ray, and the doctor came and said it's broken. And I remember sitting there and just feeling like all of the air go out of my whole system, and I started to bawl, like not just like whimper cry, but like that like cry. And of course, right when I get the news and it starts doing this, the game is over, so all the players come back into the locker room and I'm sitting there in my locker bawling, just because of again, I thought I had come out of the pit and I just realized I had just fallen back into it. And so it was humbling. And it was difficult. But the positive side is it got me to realize, if I put all my eggs in this football basket, this is what my life is going to be like. It's up to the football gods. And I realized I need to find something else that I'm interested in so that I'm not on this roller coaster of good game, bad game, hurt, healthy, And so I started developing other parts of myself.
Can we talk about some of those other parts of yourself?
Yeah. So the main thing I think that helped me was I started to travel more. I started to visit other countries and just get a more expanded idea of what the world was about. And that started to introduce me and open me up to other things like astrology and yoga and spirituality, things that I never really even knew that I was interested in. But as I traveled and met different people and was exposed to these different things, I realized that I had a deep passion for them. And so I started to, instead of just being a football player, in my downtime in the off season, I would take classes and I would travel more and I would study things, and I started to become a more well-rounded person.
Got you. Okay, so you eventually in 2002, if I have this correct, you go on over to the Miami Dolphins.
Yep.
You have an incredible year.
Yeah.
Did this, and I want to make sure I have this right. You 2002, you're NFL's overall leading rusher with over 1,800 yards. You're all pro bowler. You did your thing that year. You traveling and really getting into other things and understanding that football, it can't be the end all and be all. Did it help you with that trade?
It did. It helped me a lot because I just started to look at myself as more than just a football player and these other interests, and I just wasn't so stressed. I just wasn't so stressed about football stuff. And I think moving to Miami, it's such a multicultural city. And again, I was just exposed to so many different things, and I started to develop as a human being. And I definitely think it made me a better football player, but it also made football, helped me realize that football was taking up so much of my time. I started doing those other things, and I realized I like traveling more than I like playing football, and kind of put me in a spot where I had to make a decision. And so in 2004, it got to the point where I realized, you know, I need to be doing something different, and so I started traveling. I retired from the Dolphins. I walked away, and within 2 weeks, I set off for Samoa and Fiji. I went to Australia, I went to Thailand, and just, and it's funny, at the time I was having such a good time. I thought to myself, I might never come back to the America. I might just become a world traveler.
Okay, so this is again, you have an incredibly interesting story. You know, you're Ricky Williams. You're an incredible athlete. The world knows you. 2003, you abruptly say, "I retire from the game of football." Now, and I don't know how true this is, but it was rumored that marijuana had something to do with it. If you're talking 2021, not a big deal. '03, big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
How much of your yeah, it's a big freaking deal back then.
Yeah,
Different times today.
yeah.
How much of your decision had to do with marijuana use, or was it strictly just I'm finding other interests outside of the game of football?
Yeah, I mean, it had a little bit to do with marijuana, but it was like 90% that I was ready to do something else. And so it was actually 2004. But because 2003 was a wake up call for me. I mentioned earlier that my whole career, every level I was at, I improved on my stats year in and year out. But that 2003 was the first time I broke that pattern. And I got beat up, separated both of my shoulders, and I guess I was just at that age where I was realizing, it hit me like, I'm not going to be able to do this for the rest of my life because my body is not going to be able to hold up. And so, and so I started to really take thinking about other things more seriously. And after the 2003 season, I spent 2 months in Australia, just living in a different country. And when I came back after those 2 months, I was different. I was different because in Australia, living there for a couple of months, people started to like get to know me and had no idea I was a professional football player. So I got used to a certain quality of experience with people. And then when I came back to the States, it just felt gross because I started to realize people don't even see me. They just see me, football player. And so that was a big part of it. And then stuff was going on in the Dolphins organization. It was just a mess. And so I just read the writing on the wall that's of saying the universe is telling me it's time to do something different. And so again, I walked away, called up the NFL and said, I'm good. You don't have to worry about drug testing me anymore, because I'm gonna do something else. Thank you for the opportunity, and bye. And that was that.
Okay, I gotta first ask, how much weed were you smoking?
So
Is this an all day, everyday thing? Are you Snoop Dogg at this moment? Like, what does it look like for Ricky Williams?
this is the crazy thing. At this point, I was smoking maybe 2 times a week after practice, after training. That, by myself in my condo, relaxing. That was it. And then once I got into the drug program, so now before I retired, you know, I was smoking maybe once a week because I was being tested. So it wasn't like I was chiefing all day. It's just when they put you in the drug program, they say you're not allowed to do any, and we're gonna check your pee every other day to make sure you're not doing it. And so it wasn't that I was like smoking big or anything. It just at where I was in the program, for me, they were saying you can't have any THC in your system.
So this is not like you are, all day, every day, getting high, lighting up.
Not even
You're
close.
literally doing this.
It's not
Go
even
ahead.
close. It's not even close. I mean, I was a professional football player, and so it was just something I did at the end of the day. The same way people will come home and have a drink or two just to relax, let go of the day, and get your mind right for the next day.
It- do I have this correct? While you were over living in Australia, I read somewhere that you're living in a $7 a night tent. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I was staying at a hostel, and so the hostel had like they had rooms, and they had these things that were like barracks, and then they had a campground. And when I was staying there, I'd never camped before. I'd never even pitched a tent, and so the people that stayed on the campground just seemed to be the cool people in the hostel, and so I just said it would be cool to actually like pitch a tent one day. And so I went to the store in town and I got a tent, and I got $7 a day to stay in the campground, and I loved it. Just growing up in San Diego, I wasn't really around nature a lot, and so on that campground, I just got more in tune with nature, like getting up with the sun and going to sleep when the sun goes down. It was amazing. That was really a special time in my life. I felt like I got to like shake off all the dross of just 27 years of living and kind of push a reset button and just get back to the core of who I am.
Are you over there with anybody, or are you traveling by yourself at this moment?
I was by myself. I had a friend come and visit for a week or so, but a large majority of the time I was by myself. I met some people over in Australia who I developed friendships with, but most of the time I was by myself.
Wow. You come back to the league in '05. What makes you make that decision?
So, again, when I left in '04, I thought I was never coming back. I thought I was never coming back to America. But in my travels, I met a yoga teacher, and she was a very influential person in my life, and she started teaching me the philosophy. And I came across this concept called Dharma, and it means that we all have a purpose in life. And as I was talking to her and really kind of meditating on this idea, I realized that I did have a bigger purpose in life. But in order to achieve that purpose, I had to come back to the NFL and make things right. I had to clean up my reputation, clean up my name. And so my focus was, go back to the NFL and do it right and walk away with some dignity. And at the same time, Nick Saban had just been hired as the Dolphins' new head coach. He reached out to me and said, I know there's a lot of talk. I would love to have you on my team. I'll make it easy for you. And so he made it really easy. I came back and fit right in, and it was a wonderful season.
Did you have to pay back the signing bonus over $8 million on the way back, or is that rumors?
No, I never. I mean, they took me to NFL court and got a ruling where they said I had to pay it back, but because I came back and played a couple years and finished out my contract, the Dolphins dropped it, and I never had to pay it back.
Got you. What was that first season like coming back from you, especially now you have this awakening?
Yeah, it was different.
Is it in?
It was different. It was different. I realized that, my athletic ability up until that point had just been coming from raw instinct. Yeah, I was a mental player, but it was raw instinct. And I realized after, because when I was away, I did a lot of meditation, a lot of healing work. And so I realized it was different, that I had to focus more, and it was more intentional to switch into that warrior mode. It wasn't just automatic. And I become like much more of a spiritual person. And so, that first year back, I was wearing white every day. And so it was like this integration process of, who I had been my whole life with this new kind of spiritual awakening, and trying to find out how to make that real in the football world. And it took me several years, but I think the way that I left when I came back, most of my teammates were just like, this dude is crazy. And so they just gave me the space to be myself, and it worked. People just would say, that's just Ricky. That's just Ricky. And I was like, thank you.
So did you feel like finally I'm just having the ability to be me, be the person, even if I didn't know who I was, I figured it out, I found it. In the whole world, I don't care what they think, what they say, they're giving me the space to just be Ricky, and I'm happy with it.
That's exactly what it was. And what I learned from that, and it's hard to be yourself, but once you do it and you do it consistently, people give you space. And the people that don't leave. And it just feels better. I started to attract people who were on the same level with. in football and outside of football. And again, I think it was just really about maturity and growing up and realizing, even if you're Tom Brady, right, that you can only play football for half of your life, and then you have the other half. You got to do something with that too.
So in '06, it's announced that you're getting suspended because you violated the drug policy in the NFL for the fourth time. You're suspended for the season, the entire season. What headspace are you in? Because
Man, yeah.
obviously Go ahead.
This was a hard one. This one was the true test, because it was right after the Dolphins season, and we just finished the season winning 6 games in a row. I had back-to-back 100-yard games. And so again, one of those moments where I was back, right? And then the bottom drops out again. And I was in LA. I was here in LA because Texas was playing USC in the national championship game. I was going to be on the field. And it was the morning of the game. I got a FedEx in the mail at my friend's house, and I opened it. And I was like, this is weird. I have a FedEx, and it said that I failed a drug test. And I was like, what? I just, like, everything, my whole world just, like, in my mind, just in that moment, just crumbled. And then I was thinking, okay, I gotta tell my lady who's pregnant, and like, here I go again. It was a nightmare. And it took about a week or two before I kind of landed on my feet and realized, okay, this is where I am. I'm gonna make the most of it. And that's the year I ended up going and playing a year in Toronto. And it was a blessing in disguise, that time in Toronto really, really helped me regain a love and passion for football. And it just was a great experience. I mentioned earlier my love for travel, and Toronto is one of the most multicultural cities in the world. And so I had a really positive experience and met a lot of wonderful people up there.
Got you. Okay, but I gotta ask, as difficult as this was, you have to know, if I'm using, there's a chance I'm gonna get caught. There's a chance that I'm going to fail the drug policy. For you, why take the risk?
Well, this test, I didn't take a risk. It was a substance that I didn't even know that we were being tested for. I wasn't even, like, doing drugs. It just was a supplement. And so so it was just, that's why it was one of those things where I was like, wow, like, like, I can't, like, there's something bigger going on, right? That at the end of the day, that's what I landed on. There's something bigger going on here. It's not just about me. There's a bigger story going on here. And for me, then I became curious about getting to the bottom. Okay, what is this bigger story that's going on here?
Have you ever been able to get to the bottom of it? What is your final determination on, why your life have taken these turns? Like, why? The actual why?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's still unfolding, but as I'm entering middle life, the midlife part, it's starting to make sense. It is, again, I think, as an example, I think that's the first thing that comes to mind as an example for other people, is that, that we grow up and our parents or society or the media or whatever you want to call it gives us all these ideas about what it means to be successful, right? About what it means to be successful. And I think at best we try them all out. But at the end of the day, what you said earlier, it's about listening to your heart, and that's going to give you the path to success, regardless of what everyone else is saying. And so all the times in my life where I tried to ignore what my heart was saying and do what I thought I was supposed to be doing, all these things would keep happening. These things would keep happening. When I started listening to my heart and prioritizing what my heart said, I had no issues at all. And so, I just was hard-headed. So I had to keep going, stumbling until I figured it out.
Got you. You get married in '09, to your ex-wife. You guys have 3 kids together. During this part of your life, does the marriage, does it help you get through these moments? Is your ex-wife, is the divorce amicable? How does that fit into your overall storyline?
Yeah, so it's interesting, and it's the same story, a little bit different, but it's the same story. The idea of getting into a relationship with these ideas of what a relationship is supposed to be about, but actually getting into the relationship and realizing what I need and what's going to work for me in a relationship is actually quite different. And so, in some ways, I got married in 2009, and my first wife, Kristen, like she's ride or die. Right, no doubt. Like the ups and downs and the drug tests and the moving and like all this stuff. She was great, and she was extremely supportive through it all. Okay, and on the other hand, I think if I would have had a different type of relationship, something closer to my marriage now, I think everything would have been different. And one of the things I realized about relationships, they tend to maintain the status quo. Okay, the relationships that we get into, it's almost like we have an agreement that we're gonna try to be the same. Right, we're gonna try to be the same for the course of the relationship because it provides stability. Is that I can come home and I can trust that I know how you're gonna react to something. Okay, and for me, that was my first marriage, and it was stable, right? But I need more change. I need a good fight every once in a while. And so it took me a while to realize that, because again, first wife, she was the kind of wife where everything was easy, right? She took care of everything. Okay, so on the outside, as a football player, I was thinking that's great, right? I can just focus on football and everything else is taken care of. But I realized actually I don't like that, right? Again, I need someone to stand up to me and tell me when I'm full of crap, right? I need to have that confrontation in my relationships. And so,
That's an interesting perspective.
when we did finally decide that we're great friends, and it was difficult, but it was a beautiful period of time where we realized we care about each other, but the way we're doing this marriage thing, it makes us like bump heads too much. And so the main motivation for us to divorce was to improve our relationship. And so, and it's happened. We're really good friends now. We enjoy co-parenting together. I'm happily married. She's happily in a relationship. The kids are happy. And so it's one of those hard decisions, in the moment to make and go through. But in the end, a couple of years later, everyone is in a much better place.
Understood. And if you don't mind me asking, I know that you and your father, you guys you're okay. It's not rough, as you said in the beginning of the interview. How's your relationship with your three kids with Christian?
Yeah, so I have 5 kids right now. So I have 2 kids outside of the relationship with Kristen. And one of the things that's improved over time has been my relationship with all my children. Specifically, the 3 kids with Kristen, they're the ones I'm closest to because I was around them. I was around them more. They were just here visiting for spring break, and I have a special relationship with them. And I think, I think because of the way the divorce went down, and we didn't shield the kids from it. We let them be a part of the process of realizing that we still cared about each other, but we were moving in different directions. And so I think because we respected them through that process, the relationship is still very strong.
Beautiful, beautiful. I read also that you said, because eventually you get traded from the Miami Dolphins, you go on over to the Baltimore Ravens, and your career is kind of coming to its ending point. You said you have one regret, is that you didn't finish your career as a Dolphin. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So, I really love playing for the Dolphins, and I felt like, we went through a lot together, and it just would have felt, better to finish my career there, and on top of that, I was only 400 and something yards away from becoming the all-time leading rusher in Miami Dolphins history, passing Larry Zonka. And I just think, to end my career, get rushing for over 10,000 yards, if I would have stayed in Miami, becoming the Dolphins all-time leading rusher, I just think it would have just tied a slightly neater bow onto the football side of my career. But still, it was a major milestone for me in my last regular season game as a Raven to go over 10,000 yard mark, because it just goes to show, ups and downs, suspensions, in and out, I still was able to become, one of the top 30 running backs in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, which is amazing. It just speaks to the caliber of your work ethic, your natural abilities, your God given gifts. You eventually retired from the NFL forever in 2012. Uh, in 2014, you decide to sell your Heisman Trophy. You got to elaborate on that.
Oh,
Because that trophy is so coveted to so many people. Every college athlete wants it. What would make Ricky Williams decide to part with that trophy?
well, a couple of things. One was necessity, and the other was I wasn't that attached to the actual physical trophy, more to the journey of actually winning the trophy. And so it was 2013, the summer of 2013. I got a letter from the IRS that said I hadn't paid taxes in 3 years. And so I got this letter. I'm thinking to myself, this isn't true. Like my accountant Peggy, like we talked about taxes, and I know I filed. And so I send the letter to Peggy, and we have a conversation, and she says, "Oh, you were audited, and they're trying to figure things out." And so I was thinking this is kind of fishy, and so I started talking to my attorney, and he said this seems kind of fishy. And so I put them on it, and over the next couple of months, came to realize that the FBI was investigating my financial advisor, and that where I thought I had upwards of $6-7 million in the bank, that actually I didn't have any money. And so, it's like that moment where I'm realizing, okay, here we are again, right? And I was like in this moment, okay, what am I gonna do? And like as soon as I said that, I was sitting in my office and I looked around, and I had art that I'd purchased over the years on the wall, and I had like a whole bunch of trophies behind me, and I realized I'm good, And so I called up a friend of mine who does my memorabilia deals, and I let him know the deal. And I said, if there's anyone that would be interested, I'm definitely open to taking offers. And so I was able to sell a couple of trophies and some artwork, and really get back on my feet, and keep my life moving instead of things crumbling. And so I was kind of one of the ways that winning the Heisman Trophy was able to take care of me later in life. So it worked out.
Okay. So that same trophy ends up selling at auction in 2019 for over $500,000. Do you mind me asking how much did you sell it for?
I sold it for 240.
Wow. So in a couple of years, it doubles in value.
It
And I
was-
believe that that's the highest that any Heisman Trophy's ever been sold for, correct?
It's the highest because it was my year, 1998, was the last year that the Heisman Trophy allowed trophies to be sold, and so I think that's one of the reasons people said it garnered such a high value.
Whatever became of your accountant?
Peggy, she's in prison right now. She's in prison
To this day?
right now. Yeah, she was sentenced to 10 years.
Okay. Back then, when she went under investigation, she's about 60 years old at the time, correct?
Exact. Yeah.
Okay, so she's not a young woman in prison.
She's not a young. Yeah, she's a senior. She's a senior citizen in prison.
Was she ordered to pay you? Because I gotta believe you were not the only client that she stole from.
Yeah.
Was she?
So she was ordered to pay restitution, but whether the money's gone or it's hidden well. So I mean, it was so BET has a show called Trap Queens, and they featured Peggy on the show, and so they interviewed me, and actually, first time I actually seen Peggy in 5 or 6 years, she did a Zoom from prison. And it was really interesting. She looked great, she looked wonderful. I was surprised, but it was really interesting being able to connect with her, and she's got her situation that she's dealing with. But it felt good to connect with her, and for her to see that yes, what you did was not was kind of messed up, but everybody's fine. Like everybody's
Okay,
fine.
I want to dive into that just a little bit. I know money is not a big driver for you. You have made that perfectly clear during this interview.
Yeah.
But uh, $6-8 million being stolen, that's life changing. People have been killed, murdered for a whole lot less. I find it interesting that you could compliment this woman in any way, shape, or form, because it's not just Ricky Williams. It's your legacy. It's your children.
But my
It's
children
your
are,
wife.
but they're fine. But they're all fine though. That's kind of my point. And I think when people buy into, and again, I don't want to take, money is important. We need it to live. But when we buy into that money is more valuable than just helping us survive, I think that's when we get in trouble. And even that I was fine, right? That I have then when I found out, and now that I have all the resources and the things that I need to be able to take care of myself. And I'm really, really good because I've part of my story, right? A lot of roller coasters, ups and downs. So I'm really, really good at bouncing back from adversity. I was almost as if I thrive on it. Because, as I look at the silver lining, if I would have had $7 million in the bank going into retirement, there's no way I would have done the things that I've done since then, right? It's made me wake up and realize there's more things that I can do than just live off of the money I made playing football. And it got me to be more proactive. So I started taking broadcasting more seriously. I went back to school. I started developing other skill sets. I started taking my astrology practicing more seriously. And so it feels good now that I do well for myself, that I make a good living doing all these other things that have nothing to do with football. And that's this kind of dignity and self-respect that I never would have had the opportunity to earn if Peggy hadn't done this. And so, and also I'm a spiritual person. And so I truly believe that everything that shows up in my life is happening for me, not to me. It's part of my development as a human being. And so again, it's that warrior nature of being a football player. Is I embrace adversity. I embrace playing the Steelers, right? Or the Patriots, right? Because that's how you get better.
Do you forgive Peggy?
Well, there's nothing to forgive, because it's not like, there were plenty of signs along the way, and I ignored them. So I don't blame her. It's on me. That's on me. I take responsibility for everything that shows up in my life. Right? And again, part of my spirituality is I believe in karma, that if someone has done something to me like this, then I must have done something similar to them or to someone in the past. And it's easy for me as a kid. I had really sticky fingers. If I wanted to go to the movies and I didn't have any money, I knew where my sisters kept their stash. And so it's an easy connection to make that I was a little thief. So I know probably past lives, I was stealing a lot of stuff from people. So it comes back.
Wow. I'll tell you, Ricky, you have one of the most interesting perspectives on life as anybody I've ever met. And I gotta believe, I told you at the top of the interview, you look great. You seem like you are not stressed, well rested, and it's probably because you have adopted this mindset. So good man. Okay. I wanna segue. I'll ask you a couple more questions because I really want to segue into your new podcast, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You said you did things. You took broadcasting more seriously. You went back to school. I saw you on the new Celebrity Apprentice.
Yeah.
This is after Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Leaves Celebrity Big Brother. Are these things that you were doing to earn a living, or are these things you were doing, look, I'm finally free. I'm not playing anymore. I just want to do things that inspire me, things that I can have fun with. And in your, in your own words, you said life is about the experiences. Is this why you chose to go on some of these shows?
So my goal, as I left the NFL, okay, my goal was to live a life where I get paid for being myself. Okay. And one of the things that I love to do is I love to learn. And so when the Celebrity Apprentice opportunity came up, I knew that my future was going to be starting some kind of business, but I didn't know anything about business. And so I figured, doing Celebrity Apprentice would give me an opportunity, one, to raise money for a charity that I was very passionate about, two, an opportunity to learn about business, and three, it just would be a cool, new, interesting experience. And so, I mean, that's really my decision making, right? Is one, is this going to be interesting? Is it going to fit into my schedule? And then third, am I going to get compensated for my time? And if something checks all three of those, I say yes to it.
Got you. You were briefly a spokesperson for the drug Paxil. What is that drug, and what made you make that decision?
So Paxil is a drug that I was prescribed for social anxiety disorder. And so back in New Orleans, this is right after I broke my ankle my second year in New Orleans, and I was at like my low point where I was starting, I wasn't playing football and I was hurt, so I had a lot of free time, so I was starting to do a lot of self-reflection, okay? And as I was reflecting on my life, I was realizing that most of my relationships, didn't feel very good to me. And first I started blaming other people, and then I realized that I was the common denominator. And so I started like doing some inner kind of work and paying more attention to myself. And I realized I wasn't happy and I didn't want to be around anyone. And one day I was at home watching a commercial for Paxil, and it was listing all these symptoms for social anxiety disorder. And as I saw that commercial, I was like, yes, 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 yes. And so I called up a friend of mine and I said, I think I have social anxiety disorder. Do you have any recommendations of someone I can start to talk to? And so I got into therapy, and the therapist said something that can really help people struggling with social anxiety disorder is this drug called Paxil. And so she prescribed Paxil, and I started taking it, and I don't know if it was just the drug or the fact that I was actually working on myself, but I started to feel better. And I did a story on Fox Sports talking about this, and Paxil, GlaxoSmithKline reached out to my manager and said, we'd like to hire Ricky to speak to doctors about his experience with Paxil. And so I agreed, and so we did a deal. I think they paid me $500,000, and I spent the next year traveling to cities talking to doctors about my experience with Paxil.
Beautiful. You later quit Paxil. It's quoted that you said cannabis just works much better for you in treatment. Is that correct?
Yeah, because so as I was talking to doctors and doing this work with GlaxoSmithKline, I learned about drugs. I mean, at that point, I didn't know anything. And I learned that the issue with Paxil is people will take the Paxil because it regulates their mood. But if they're not doing any kind of therapy, then it's just masking the symptoms. And so I was doing therapy, but what I found with cannabis is it didn't mask the symptoms. It helped me do better reflection. I noticed when I'd smoke marijuana, I would just sit and think about my life and think about corrections I could make that would feel better to me. And so I found that with cannabis, I was doing self-psychotherapy, and I was getting better faster than with the Paxil and the regular therapy. And so,
amazing.
And so I stopped taking Paxil, and I started using cannabis.
And I'm assuming you use cannabis to this day.
I do, yeah. I still use cannabis.
How often, if you mind me asking?
I go through phases. Sometimes I'm a daily smoker. Sometimes I don't smoke at all. Sometimes it's just at night. It just kind of depends. It just kind of depends what's going on in my life.
Okay, can we talk about your podcast for a second?
Please, yeah.
Curious Questions with Ricky Williams.
Yes.
Why a podcast? You launch it February 3rd. Why now? And what is Curious Questions with Ricky Williams?
Yeah, okay. So I launched it now because, I've been thinking about doing a podcast for a long time, just to talk, just to get my thoughts out in the world. And I kind of went back and forth. I don't want to do just the regular get on and interview people. I want to bring more of myself to it. And then the idea came, what if I found a way to integrate astrology into the podcast? And I started talking to my daughter, my oldest daughter, Marley, about it. And she came up with this whole 12-page report about how she thinks I should do it. And so I kind of was flipping through it, and I was like, this is really good. And so I reached out to Cast Media, and we sat down and kind of talked through the concept, and they were interested. and willing to test it out and see how it goes. And so the concept is I have a guest on, they send me their birth information, I put it in my computer and it prints out their birth chart. And because I've been studying this for almost 20 years, I know how to interpret a chart. And so I look at the chart and I pull, interesting combinations out, and then I use it to inform the questions I ask my guests. And the idea is because I'm looking at a chart, which kind of shows you what's going on inside of someone, that it gives me access to questions and parts of that person that they've never, talked about publicly. And so, I'm part astrologer, part detective, part interviewer, and it's been really interesting because depending on how open the guest is, how comfortable with astrology they are, and then how well I do getting them comfortable during the interview. There's different depths that the interviews get to, but I have a good time, and it's interesting sharing my astrological knowledge with people. But what I'm realizing, something I didn't expect, is I'm learning so much about astrology, but also about myself and the guests that come on.
Astrology, many people don't believe in it. Many people question, or is this just something cute and it's fun to know, okay, this is my sign and this is what they say my traits are. You really are into astrology. What do you find about astrology is so curious, for lack of a better word? What has sucked you in?
Because it helps you make sense of things that don't make sense to you.
Give me an idea.
So I was playing golf the other day, and the guy I was playing with, we had a similar conversation. And he said, what's been the biggest revelation that you've received about yourself from astrology? Okay. And part of astrology is it gives you the ability to go forward in time and to go back in time and to understand those periods of time from an astrological perspective. Okay. And so as soon as I became proficient enough in astrology to understand how to use it, I was curious about this time, 2004. Okay. 2004, all this crazy stuff going on in my life. Okay. And we've talked about all these ups and downs. So curious, right? Once I understand the astrological language, to look back at these times and to see, what does the astrology say? And it's 100% smack dead on, to where when I started reading astrology and looking back at these times, not all of, but a large majority of the guilt and the shame, it disappeared because I understood it from a higher perspective of how does this fit into the grand scheme of things? And it made sense, okay? So the planet, I'll give you an example, okay? The planet Uranus, okay? Planets in astrology represent parts of ourself that need to be developed, okay? And we use 10 planets, so we're saying there's 10 parts of ourselves, okay? And Uranus is a part of ourself that's responsible for breaking free, okay? Breaking free of any kind of limiting rules, either limiting rules that other people put on us or limiting rules that we put on ourselves, right? That because I'm a guy, I can't do this, or because I'm black, I can't, right? All of these are like the limiting rules that we box ourselves in from, right? And we can't live our lives if we're bound in like this. So we all need the part of ourselves that questions authority, that rebels, that breaks free, okay? And so this planet, whenever it moves in the chart and it hits something in our chart, it activates that. And so this time in my life where I walked away from football, I was trying to fit myself into a box that I didn't fit into, okay? And so when I look back at that time from that perspective, like I said, it made sense, okay? It made sense. And it's not just that one time. As I looked at these major shifts in my life from an astrological lens, they just made more sense. And I could understand, oh, this is why I had to go through that experience. And this is how it connects to what I'm doing right now. And so astrology gives us the ability to connect the dots.
Wow. It's interesting because you were not known for doing interviews early in your career, wanting to do interviews. Now you're on the other side of the table. How does that feel?
Well, that's the whole point. The reason I didn't like doing interviews is because, I became famous for wearing a helmet during the interviews, because what I felt like when I got to the NFL, especially, that they weren't interviewing me as a person. They were interviewing some image that they expected me to be. And so I hated doing these interviews because I felt like, who are you even talking to? And so with Korea's questions, that's the whole point, is bringing, usually people that have some kind of fame and asking them questions that they've never been asked before. So we can have an interesting conversation, because a chart shows you who's really here. And to be able to ask questions to the deeper parts of someone, not just the outer superficial layers, that's what I wanted. And so that's what I'm trying to create with the podcast.
Okay, so had somebody come at you like this in 2000, 2004, you're wearing a helmet during interviews, clearly like, I don't want to be here. If someone had come to you with this same concept, what would you have said to them? Astrology, would you have had this same outlook? Because now you're coming to people with a very, very different concept and a very, very different technique and way of interviewing people. Do you think, had someone come to you back in 03, 04 the same way, would you have been receptive to it and took that helmet off? Or you would have been like, what the hell are you talking about?
I would have been excited, because it's something that was different and something that was new. So I would have been open. I would have been open-minded enough to give him a shot. I would have said, this actually sounds interesting. Let's have a conversation.
Really? Okay. So I know some of your guests or your upcoming guests are Hall of Famer Earl Campbell.
Yes.
Have you guys had a chance to sit down yet?
We spoke last week. Yes.
Beautiful.
And
you guys have so much to talk about. Are you looking forward to that interview?
So because again, I've known Earl for over 20 years. Okay, known him for over 20 years, and consider him a close friend, right? But I never talked to him about astrology, and so this was our first conversation about astrology. And true to form, I learned something new about Earl that just blew my mind. And I wouldn't have had access to this information if I wouldn't have looked at his chart and known what questions to ask.
Where can we find this podcast?
Wherever you find your podcast. So, I watch it on iTunes, but it's Spotify. It's everywhere.
Is it also filmed on? So can we find it on YouTube as well?
Exactly. You can also find the video on YouTube.
Do you feel like this part of your life, where's Ricky Williams at? You're doing your podcast and you're doing it your way. You're allowing yourself to just be you. Is this the happiest you've been?
By far. And the great part is, as long as my health stays on track, it's just getting better. It's just moving more in this trajectory. And I feel like, all the grimy hard work I did at a young age is really paying off now, because it was hard, but I know who I am now, and I trust myself. And so I have this confidence that anything that life brings to me, that I'm ready for it. I'm ready to make the best out of it.
You're an amazing example for anybody who's struggling to figure out who they are. Can you just take a second and give some words of advice or some encouragement to someone who may feel misunderstood? Because you're a rare example. You're high profile. Many people know your story. Many people know your name, but there's a lot of people who they feel misunderstood, and they do it in silence. They're anonymous. No one knows their name. And because of that, they feel as though I might not matter, or my existence might not matter. Can you speak to someone out there who's struggling because they don't necessarily buy into the norms?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is that I learned is God don't make junk, right? And so the first thing I had to learn was there's nothing wrong with me. Okay, regardless of what everybody is saying, there is nothing wrong with me. Okay, that was the first thing that I had to realize and come to terms with, and that was hard because, again, so many messages from people that cared about me, sometimes not overt, subtle, but that there's something wrong with me. And so first I had to come to that terms that God don't make no junk, there's nothing wrong with me. And then the second thing is something my mom always used to say. She would say, go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. And so and it's hard, especially coming out of COVID, to connect and find like-minded individuals. But the thing is, in order to bolster ourselves up, we need to find people that can see us and can appreciate us, okay? But in order to do that, we have to have the courage to put ourselves out there and to be ourselves. And so it's this thing of first, realizing there's nothing wrong with you. Don't be ashamed to put yourself out there, and people that don't get you, realize they're not your people. And notice the ones that vibe with what you're putting out there. Because, the truth is, it's a jungle out there. And we have to face challenges squarely and bravely in order to have any kind of emotional, financial, relationship success. That's the truth.
Great words of advice. And it comes from a place of experience. Obviously, you have had an incredible journey. Ricky, I thank you so much for your candor. I thank you so much for attacking every question head on. Coming into this interview, I didn't know what to expect, but I find you to be extremely open and outgoing with your answers. So thank you. And, your podcast, best of luck with it. I think it's an incredible concept, and we all need to go and check that out. Where can people again find you and the podcast? Because I just want to plug it again before we close out.
Yeah, so iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm on Instagram at Williams. Yeah, I got @Williams somehow, and I hang around on Twitter sometimes at Rick the Laureate. So that's where you can find me. Also, I'm launching a new app this summer. You can check us out on the website. It's called HeyLeela.com is the website. The app is Leela, and it's a relationship app. So an app that helps you understand yourself and other people using astrology.
Do you mind spelling Leela?
Lila.
Just so that we can look out for it?
Yeah, Lila.
Ricky.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and continue success and blessings, my brother.
Thank you.